Hey, how you guys doing? My name's John, and I have been kayaking for a couple of years now, but just, toying with really kind of upgrading my kayak in the most cost-efficient way possible. And I wanted to show you some things that I've been doing, picking up on some of the other ideas. I've got a long ways to go, and like all of us, I'll modify and improve things as I move along. But if you can see it, there's my kayak right there, right? So it's an 11 and a half foot West Marine kayak. And let me show you a little bit of what I've done. I wanted to, like many of you, add a power source so I could use a trolling motor on my kayak. And I looked at a number of your very helpful videos, and thank you for that. Here's one of the things that I've done, but I still want to modify because it doesn't really look great. But in terms of creating something that would hold the the trolling motor on. So right now I've got a 30-pound thrust Minn Kota, and it is a little bit heavy. I was concerned about the listing on the side, but I took it out for a shakedown cruise the other day, and that hasn't been too bad. But let me show you what I've done here to put that trolling motor on. So have a look at this. So what I did on the back of the kayak, where I wanted to mount it, is that I just simply cut 2 blocks, and that's about 1.5 inches or so, maybe 2 inches maximum across, because of the way that those bungee cords sit and the holders of them. I didn't have a lot of room to work with, but if you wanted to use more room, you could. I may do that in the future. But I cut those blocks, and as you can see, used a metal strap, but I put a couple screws down in them. They seem to be holding pretty well. So you might be asking yourself, well, why, do I have that space between them? Well, I created this. So I found myself a nice, I think it's about a 1.5 by 1.5 piece of board. And I attached this board here on the back of that, as you can see, right? And now it slides right in there. So now these straps, of course, are there to secure it even further. I'm not going to push it too hard right now. Let me see if I can get it to go a little bit anyway. Yeah, there we go. And it hooks in on the other side and straps down on the other side. Now I've got this out here. Now, of course, I move it in much closer just to, create better balance. But now my Minn Kota sits on this quite easily, and this is very, very sturdy. I've secured that underneath with like 3 or 4 or 5 about probably 2-inch to 3-inch deck screws. So the other thing that I was dealing with, again, is a power source, right? I didn't want to use a full car battery, and I, of course, have been researching the lithiums, and they're just a little bit more than what I want to spend right now, although I do think they're a good deal, and I may move to that in the future. But I kind of wanted to work with what with what I had on hand, or research to see what I could find that would be better. And so let me show you the battery that I ended up with. Let me see if I can go into my garage here, and I'll pull it out for you, and I'll show you what I've done with it. So I'll just set this on the edge of my aluminum boat. But take a look at that. That's a full river battery, acid battery, full river. And I'm not going to remove the strap. I'll set it to the side a little bit so you can see some of the specs. But this little guy only weighs 23 pounds. Now, as I mentioned, I took my kayak out for a bit of a shakedown cruise a couple of days ago, and this thing had plenty of power. I couldn't believe it. It had tons of power. And then I brought it back home, and I checked the used my meter to check how much power was still in it. It was still pretty much full. So I was gonna put my money there and use that. If you look it up online, these things sell for $150. It's a deep cycle battery. And I got lucky because I found somebody here locally in my community, because that's what I do. I do my research, and somebody who is selling blemished batteries. And I got this battery brand new for $40. $40, incredible price. Now, what did I do? Okay, I'm thinking, I got my power source now that I want to try out. I've got my motor holder. It's sturdy. It's going to do its thing. Now, where am I going to put this? So on my kayak, I have, as you probably have, one of these storage places, right? Now, this is not a very big storage thing, and that's why the battery was awesome. You know, you could take this off, and you know, I could unscrew this and do it that way. I tried to put the battery in there without having to move this. It was a little bit tight. So what I did is I removed the whole thing, as you can see, and I cut just a little bit right here around the corners, and boom, the battery fit in. One of the things that I noticed in putting the battery in there, of course, like most of you, it's plastic down there and it's slippery. So the battery, you know, I didn't want it moving back and forth. So that's where you saw this black band. Well, what is that? Well, until I find something better to do, what I took is a kind of a knee pad, a cheap knee pad you could probably get at the dollar store for $1. And it has a Velcro strap around it. And I'm going to find another way to strap that down so it's completely secure. But it's foam, of course, on the pad. And so I strapped it on the bottom, again, using the strap that comes with it. And I slide it down. Here you go. Let me see if I can do this. It's got a few things in the way right now, but it goes straight down into there. Boom, piece of cake, right? Now, I've got that in there. If I want, I cover that back up, right? Like, perfect. It's like no cosmetic problems, nothing like that. And the battery does not slide now because it's got that foam pad. So, you know, I mean, I may glue a foam pad onto the bottom of that battery. I may figure out a better way to hold it. But for now, like I said, I took it out already. Perfect, does not move at all. All right? So now I got the battery in there. There it is. Now what am I going to do? Well, I'm thinking about how am I going to run the power from the front of the kayak to the back. You know, I was going to buy cables and all sorts of fancy stuff, but what I ended up doing is just going down to Harbor Freight. Actually, I had an old pair of jumper cables, but I went down to Harbor Freight. For $9.99, you can get, I think it's 8 gauge, you know, jumper cables. $9.99, right? Clamps on both ends, what have you. I didn't need the whole 12 feet, so I think these cables were like 8 feet. And in fact, it worked out perfect because this is an 11.5 foot kayak, and I didn't need to go the whole distance of the kayak. I just needed to get it from there, you know, back to where the motor was. And the motor's also got a couple feet of cord on it, but I didn't have to use it. But I thought, well, you know, I don't want to run the cables on the outside. I want to run them on the inside. So how am I going to do that? Well, what I did, again, I'm just finding stuff in my garage to figure this out. I'm not buying anything, right? So here's what I did. You see that? Let me see if I'll get over here a little bit in a better position. You see that? What that is, it is a, I don't know where I got it, but I like to save those kind of things just in case I need them for something like this. But it's a black, let's see if I can, I don't know if it'll come out. I don't really want to pull it out right now because I'll break the seal. But it's just a cap to something. And within the cap, there is like a bit of a lip, like a beveled lip, only about, you know, an eighth of an inch, or maybe not even a quarter, I think, high. So I had, you know, the cap was, the actual lid of the cap was a little bit larger by about a quarter of an inch. So I think it was about like a 1 inch, I don't know what you call it, but I drilled it out to the size of 1 inch. And this cap happened to fit perfectly, super tight, super perfect. So on the inside, you can see the outside of the cap right now. On the outside of the cap, you're seeing 2 terminals. And I've put some red tape to indicate which one is hot. But on the inside of that cap, you're gonna find that I just basically came up with 2 bolts, right? And I drilled out the cap so the bolts would come through the cap. I secured the inside of the bolt, you know, on the inside of the cap with actual nuts, and then put a second nut on top of it, which of course is to hold the terminals. So what you're not seeing there is that on the inside, so first of all, I took the clamps off one side of the battery cables, and on the other side, I left them on. So on the side that I took them off, you know, I put just basically some of those U clamps that would fit right in here, crimp those on, and tighten the nuts on the inside, and those are secured. On the outside, obviously you can see I'm using the wing nuts here, and now all I do is connect my, you know, the terminals, you know, the cables from my trolling motor right to this. It takes seconds. Now I ran the cable all the way inside the kayak to the battery. So here they are. Right. Now I decided to leave the clamps on because those will clamp on very easily and perfectly to that battery that I was showing you. You can see the terminal is, you know, just a little post, and it just clamps on easily. But carrying the kayak around, I thought, okay, well, I got to secure the cable up here, because if I don't, it's going to slide back down into the kayak, and that's going to be a real pain in the butt to pull that out every darn time. So basically, you can see right here, there's a little bit of a piece of metal. All that is, what I did is that I used a tiny bungee cord right here that had the metal ends on it like that, the little hooks. The nice thing about those little hooks is that they are bendable. So I was able to bend that hook around the, you know, the cables, leaving enough room so I could, you know, maneuver those around when I needed to and hook it up to the battery. But once I dropped that down, now it's secure with this bungee. And so it's always there. So again, so some of the ideas that I've been working with, and now if I want to, I can just close that up or leave it open, you know, when it's a nice day. I don't need to really close it down, just for one less thing to do, right? When we're trying to get out on the water or get off the water. Don't really want a lot of stuff to do. So did that. All right, so other than that, you know, I'll keep you updated about what I'm going to be doing with this kayak. But now came the issue of the kayak cart. Okay, so of course, you've probably done your research and you see that there's a lot of different carts out there. And you've probably looked at YouTube videos and see what guys are creating for carts. And you've probably seen the PVC cart that, you know, people have created. Well, one of the things that I was impressed by, and maybe again, because I already had the supplies here, because I was just about ready to go down to the hardware store, get all this PVC stuff, get the tires, get, you know, all the hardware, nuts and bolts, things like that, the threaded rod that would become the axle, etc. I was going to go that direction. And then I saw somebody or a couple of videos on how to create a cart out of a milk carton, which I happen to have a couple of milk cartons sitting around. So here's what I did. Now, there was a video that a guy did. I've seen this a couple times, but it was a particular guy. He said the thing he wanted to use was the wheels off of a golf, like a golf caddy or what have you. So here's the golf caddy right here, as you can see. That's all tangled up now, but that's the golf caddy. And I still may have plans for this. So I just, the cool thing about these wheels, you can see that the wheels on the golf caddy were attached to that axle there. So it comes with a little axle that comes out. So the question then is, how does it secure itself, right? Because with the PVC cart, you've got to buy a tire that has a hole through the hub, of course, and you have to secure it that way. These aren't like that. These aren't like that. The cool thing about these, let me show you, and this is what the guy was saying about it, the ease of it on the other video. I don't know if you can see this, but underneath there's a kind of a screw there. You just undo that screw and the wheel comes off. Look at, and the wheel itself has a hub already built into it. So each wheel turns independently, independent of the axle. So I got myself my cart, right? My old milk cart. Here you go. As you can see down here, what you're looking at there is an old piece of rebar that I found in my garage. The ends of it initially were a little bit too thick to fit into the wheel. Let me just show you that if I can here real quick. On this wheel, I'm going to get that nut right off it. You can't see what I'm doing from the video right now, but I just undid the tire. Watch. Ta-da! And now you can see the thing that I'm talking about that tightens. And here is the piece of rebar that I worked with. Like I said, it was a little too thick, so I ground it down, and I wanted the axle to go in as far as possible, so I ground down quite a bit of that axle. And now all I have to do is tighten up that wheel, and it's secure, right? Tighten it up, secure. I didn't say this, but you know what? That golf caddy thing, I got at Goodwill for $6, right? All I needed was the wheels, but I might be able to do something with the handle of it because it's a collapsing handle. So $6, guys, right? Go to your Goodwill, go to the Salvation Army, go to these places, and you will find this stuff for cheap. I just got lucky, man, because there's a Goodwill that I usually go to because it's by Harbor Freight here. And I always go over there and see what I could find. And I found this immediately. Tires are in good condition, the whole thing. So can you see how easy that slips onto the rod? The nice thing about that rod, which is now the axle, is that it's stationary. It doesn't turn. So I was able to drill holes into the milk carton. Again, show you that, into the milk carton. And voila, nice and tight, right? No need for washers, no need for, I did put a spacer in there. I don't know if you can see it. There is a little plastic spacer that I did insert in there because I wanted a little distance. I probably didn't need it because you can see there's enough clearance between that connection from the tire to the cart. But I wanted a little bit of extra. And so I put the spacers in. Again, the spacers were just something that I had stashed away because I knew someday I would use them, man. You know this, guys, right? You just never know when you're going to use this stuff, and you can always use spacers for something. So hard plastic spacers, okay? So the next thing is that my kayak, like probably many of yours, has a kind of a tri-hole design or a deep V, right? Here's a deep V in the middle of it, right? So initially the cart had 4 even sides, because there was a handle here and a handle here. But what I decided to do was just to cut very easily, just take that saw and zip through the plastic here, and up here there was a metal rod, but that took just a few extra seconds to zip through. So I cut that V. Now, it accommodates the kayak perfectly. As you can see, pool noodles. Now, I use the extra thick pool noodles, but those pool noodles went on there nice and secure, even to the point where there's no need for tape. There's no need to do anything to secure these pool noodles. These suckers are on here. So now I've got that. So I'm thinking also, on the PVC video, they talked about leaving a T in the axle, so you could connect a longer piece of PVC to be able to direct the cart, you know, where you want it to be underneath the kayak. Again, being the saver that I am, I had a rod, if you will. You can see it. You see this rod? What is it? It's an old broomstick, right? And on the end of that broomstick, there is a threaded piece of plastic, because that threaded piece would go into the broom head, right? And so here's what I did. I drilled a hole in the very top of the cart, right here at the bottom. Drilled a hole there, pushed it all the way through, drilled a smaller hole, of course, on the other side, where you can see I've been able to thread that end of the broomstick into. So now, and it's super solid. So now I have got an amazing, look at this. I'm gonna pick this cart up on the rod that I just put in there, right? That's how tough that is. I don't know if you could do that with the PVC one. And so there it is. So now I've got the handle. Perfect. So, as I mentioned, like I said, the challenge for me was just try to utilize stuff that I already had in the house. So basically $6 for the golf cart, super steal, right? The carton, obviously I had laying around here, didn't cost me a thing. The broom handle didn't cost me a thing. The chunk of rebar that I used didn't cost me a thing. And the pool noodle was like $3. So I created a very effective, sturdy cart for $9. So I'm happy about that. You know, I looked at some of the other carts again. I thought, well, you know, maybe I want something that looks a little classy or whatever. I mean, I can still paint this up, stuff like that, and make it look pretty cool. But then I thought, you know, why do that? Because this thing is solid as a rock. And, you know, I can take it apart in seconds. I showed you how to do that, right? Boom, those tires come right off. If I wanted to pull the axle out, I could. Take that broomstick off of it, take the pool noodles off. There it is. There it is. So again, you know, even for the hooking up the power source to the kayak, I just used, you know, some leftover lumber that I had that happened to be a good fit for that. You use whatever you want. You know, some metal braces. I think those cost me like $2 a piece at hardware sales. The $9.99 cables. You know, you probably got nuts and bolts laying around that aren't gonna, you know, charge you an arm and a leg. And, you know, look around and find yourself one of those small acid batteries if you want to just use that for a while. Again, it's working great for me, especially I don't plan on doing any open water stuff. I'm just cruising around here bass fishing and staying close to the shore, and I do like to paddle the kayak around as well. So, but this is going to be great if I feel like trolling and doing those kind of things. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. And like I said, I'll be looking to do some modifications on my kayak. I don't really want to get too crazy with it, but I do want to rethink that mount on the back. I know I can cut down into the kayak and sturdy it that way, but I don't really want to cut down into it at this point. But if you have any ideas about a different way to mount that, I'm open to it. Like I said, but it's all about doing it low cost, right? All about doing it low cost. So I hope this has been helpful. Take care.